finally happened, Penn State fans. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Sean Fitz, Blue White Illustrated, here with me for breaking news, something that Penn State fans have been waiting 5 years for, maybe, Fitz? What's going on with the Nittany Lions in the transfer portal?
The prodigal son, at least that's kind of what he's known on the internet. Julian Fleming, Catawassa's own, Southern Columbia, former star, former Ohio State Buckeye, has committed to Penn State. And this has been something that, I think Penn State fans have in the back of their mind at least wanted to see for a long time. As a five-star prospect from down the road, very familiar with Penn State, depending on who you talk to, said he was committed to Penn State at one point during the high school recruiting process, but comes back around. A unique opportunity for him. He's played 4 years, and he's got the going to get the COVID year back, so one more year with the Nittany Lions. Boy, this has been a hot button issue for a long, long time around these parts.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because this is one of those stories that, where do you start? Do you start at the beginning? Do you start about the initial spurning of the Nittany Lions for Ohio State? Do you start now? Do you start it after his career at Ohio State? There's a bunch of different points. So I guess, where do you land on Julian Fleming, the wide receiver? What do you think Penn State's getting here with him in this fifth year? I think he is right now.
Yes, this will be his fifth year. He was a part of the class of 2020, went out there. Of course, that year didn't count. And he played in 8 games in 21, 11 in 22, and then 12 this year in 2023. So it's just a very interesting situation because this is a guy who came from the best wide receiver room in the country. I don't think that's really debatable. He was the number 3 guy there. His production kind of tailed off this year. 26 catches, 270 yards, 0 touchdowns. Off of a year where he had 6 touchdowns as a junior. Yeah, I guess they would call him a junior in 2022, where he caught 34 balls for 533. The production has never been like over the top, but then again, you got to think who he's been surrounded by. So this is the exercise for this offseason, is to figure out if Ohio State's number 3 can be Penn State's number 1, number 2, maybe number 3. I don't know. It's very interesting. I know people feel very strongly about this, but Fleming is a guy with experience from a place where they do it better than anybody else. And it'll be very interesting to see how that balances out with the group that he's going to walk into at Penn State.
Yeah, the quarterback always has a certain percentage of a receiver's production. Like the quarterback is a part of that element as well. So this year, I think Kyle McCord was clearly a step back from the players that he'd been playing around. But you make a great point of the other receivers in the room also were a huge factor in that. So that kind of trying to figure out where he lands on the scale, I think that's really is Penn State getting a lead receiver? Do you think he can be that for the Nittany Lions?
I think he can be a leader of this receiver group. Like it's very interesting. Like I don't know. Like I can't look at that and say this guy's going to catch 60 balls next year and be the guy that's, was the number 1 receiver in that class of 2020. I think ESPN had him as the number 1 overall prospect. Like I can't look at it and say that for sure. You can say that he's been productive over the last couple of years in a secondary role. How does that change when you're asking him to be the guy? Is Penn State even asking him to be the guy? I don't know. But I do know that if you ask people around the Ohio State program, you ask people that have been around Fleming the last couple of years, there is a good example that he's been setting. He has been the veteran guy. He has been the guy that I think James Franklin will ask him to lead this group of wide receivers, which I think has talent. Like, they've underperformed, and no doubt that they fell short in terms of the 2023 performance, but there's talent there. There's guys that they've brought in that think that they maybe in the back end of their career could improve, things like that. So you put a guy like Fleming in front of him, a guy that's done it, a guy that's worked his way into it, because it's an interesting case in that when he was coming out of Southern Columbia, he was better than everybody else. Like there's nobody close to him at that level of football, and in Pennsylvania, to be honest. But like he was not the 4.3 physical freak. He was not the guy that's going to come out there and test out the wazoo. He's not going to be the guy that goes to the NFL Combine and blows people away. So you've got to work around that. You've got to work yourself into that. And I think he's done that. And I think that would be a pretty good example to set for the guys that are in that room.
I find it really interesting. Some of the other players that Penn State has been going after in the portal, and this goes back to all my thoughts about Marcus Hagan to begin with. You got Donovan McCulley, 6'5", from Indiana on the target list. The receiver from Miami that was in for, I believe, at some point, 6'5", and now Julian Fleming, 6'4". Seems like they're going after size, and they got in that respect. It seems like they got somebody that they were targeting. Do you
Well,
feel like Penn State comes out of this with what they want?
Well, unfortunately, Julian's 6'2", so he's
Oh,
not quite.
he looks
He's
big.
a he's a bigger, boxier receiver than you're used to seeing. He's one of those guys that would play that slot H back role type thing for Ohio State and do a pretty good job. They've had some good ones. Noah Brown did that a couple of years ago. Like, be that guy that's like the secondary. You call him a possession receiver, but whatever. He's going to be a guy that's been in the strength program for 4 years, so he's going to
Mhm.
with him as well. So yes and no. You look at a little bit about what they've gone after. McCulley is going to go back to Indiana, which is an incredible win for that new staff there to get him back because Penn State wanted him, A&M wanted him, Michigan wanted him. Big schools wanted him, and he's going to go back to Indiana to finish his career. Which, credit to him, that's pretty awesome to hear. Yeah, I don't think it's a situation where you're looking at it and say, "Hey, get bigger." It's, "Hey, go get
Mhm.
the best that you can get," because they're still after some other guys around the country that are a little bit smaller guys, shiftier guys. And to be honest with you, you look at what Penn State trotted out there in 2023, and you think there's really no rhyme or reason to go with one specific type of skill set, to go with
Yeah.
one specific type of guy.
I've been focusing on that a little bit for a couple of reasons. Let me just explain. And first off, Andy Kotelnicki and his ability to move players around and use motion, it makes a lot of this conversation academic. So I just want to acknowledge that. But this is coming from a position where I guess what we've seen over the last couple of years, Penn State has had good sized guys, but they haven't had guys that can beat man coverage, like going in and beating press coverage or winning one-on-one battles. They haven't had anyone consistently out there that can do that against man coverage on a regular basis. And one of the common themes, under Taylor Stubblefield, is all those guys were a little bit undersized. They were a little bit smaller on the 5'11" side, on the 190-pound side. So getting a guy, with size and physicality, the numbers don't necessarily bear this out. But the point of Julian Fleming, I think, coming to Penn State is he wants to change that. And the point, I guess in my mind, is that Penn State is getting an outside receiver because they have some guys that have talent that skew towards that slot body type, maybe that Z working in space. But again, all of these things with Andy Kotelnicki are all going to change. And you would hope, if you're a Penn State fan, that it's all going to change for the better with the new lineup of offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach. Fitz, last question or last kind of topic here we have is generally Julian Fleming in the fit at Penn State from a perspective, going all the way back to the beginning, just to kind of button this up. This wasn't an issue where he had to come in and apologize for anything that was said or done during his recruitment. I'm assuming Penn State and Julian Fleming had there was no mending of fences or burning of burned bridges that had to be rebuilt. This is kind of an understanding, I would imagine, so many years later, right?
Yeah, I think an understanding is the way to go with that. I mean, there's definitely like ego to be checked on both sides here. Like, for Fleming to come back home and give this one more go into Penn State, who, obviously has played against them the last couple of years and did not particularly appreciate that he went to Ohio State. Like, that's just general, logical points here. But yeah, I mean, I think it's okay if he's deciding to come back around. I mean, we heard shortly after he went in the portal that Penn State was a spot that he was welcome to go to, or he was looking to go to. We had to check it out on our side to make sure that it was going to work. And we did that. We talked a little bit last week, and then at the end of last week, it sort of came together that Fleming was going to pick Penn State. We're also recording this in advance, so I'm not sure when exactly he's going to put that out there. But yeah, I think it's a checking of egos on both sides. I think it's something that can be a mutually beneficial decision. I'm not sure what his NFL prospects are. Like I said, he's been in there for 4 years. Now he's hitting the portal for a 5th year. So does that impact your own expectations for him and things of that nature? So I think there's a lot to look at here, a lot of curious things. But this is a guy that Penn State's always respected the talent. They've always respected the way he's handled things and done, and handled his business. And he had a chance to join that Brian Hartline's wide receiver room, and he took him up on it. And even though that's not the decision they liked, I mean, you can't fault a kid for going to the best room of his position in the country. So I think that there's that. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it's received, Central Pennsylvania and things like that. I mean, it's just it's been such a hot button, like his name, regardless of how many ways people have spelled it over the years, it just brings out a certain emotion in Penn State fans. And now they're going to get a chance to have his final year in that jersey that they prefer over the scarlet and gray. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Like I said, this is one, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if he can go out and be an all Big Ten receiver next year, or he can go out and not make the dent that people think he's going to make. I don't know how it's going to turn out. And I'm comfortable saying that because this is such a big difference to go from the number three receiver in the best off, I guess you can call him the best offense in the Big Ten, to a place that definitely needs production. Let's be honest here. So I don't know how it's going to turn out, but Penn State is going to try and make it. And if it helps out the rest of that room by providing them a compass for the way that you're supposed to work and the way that you handle yourself at a championship level, which is this guy's been competing for championships the last couple of years, I think that's a good thing.
All that stuff we'll be following at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Great time to remind you, sign up here, Blue White Illustrated on YouTube. Totally free for you to sign up, subscribe, make sure you don't miss any breaking news. Last thing, Fitz. Is Penn State done at receiver, do you think? Do you have an eye still on that position in the portal?
Yeah, we're always going to have an eye on this one. This is one that Penn State set out to sign a couple of guys for, and we're going to see which direction that goes. Unfortunately, as we record, I can't tell you what's going to happen. Penn State's still going to look at receiver. They're still going to look at corner.
So check it all out, bluewhiteillustrated.com. Sean Fitz is working hard on all kinds of stuff, not just Penn State football, recruiting, other stuff. So subscribe to bluewhiteillustrated.com and get all that great information. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We will talk to you with the next breaking news from Penn State football.